All right, welcome to this information session, both to our audience and, of course, to Ms. Montague, who is our MYP coordinator. A question that has been posed to me over the years is how and why do we choose languages? It's a difficult choice. It's a big choice that parents have to make. And we felt that one of the best ways to perhaps relay that information to parents is to share the 12 or 13 most important questions. And so we're going to work our way through those questions, and we'll share them with parents.
Okay,
so in terms of language choices for students moving from grade 5 into grade 6, a very important question is, well, why study another language?
Okay. The IB does require that students take on an additional language, but they do it for a good reason. There are all kinds of benefits to learning another language, from the thinking skills such as improving memory, problem solving, multitasking, to the social and cultural, being able to access another culture and appreciate another culture. For those kids who travel, it also helps them understand their own cultural identity. And you bring it down to the personal one, especially we have a very international community. It allows kids to connect to other kids now and when they travel, which makes living in another country a better experience.
And more exciting.
More exciting.
Yeah, and you can interact with the people and the society around you better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Having said that, and obviously we're in Korea, but what languages are available for students moving from grade 5 into grade 6 at our school?
Okay, there are 3 languages currently. If a student is a native Korean speaker, we have Korean A, which is language and literature for them to continue on. For students learning an additional language, we have Spanish and we have Korean.
Okay, wonderful. So what do you learn in Korean A? Because you said it's for native speakers, but so what do you do in Korean A?
Korean A is where you think of it in terms of your English class. You're not only learning to improve your reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, but you're also learning about the literature of the language. You'll be reading fiction, non-fiction, poetry, prose, newspapers. It just gives you the full experience that you would experience if you were in a Korean school studying literature.
So you can either do Korean A, but you also mentioned that students could do Spanish B or Korean B. So let's deal with Spanish B first. What does a student do in Spanish B?
Spanish B starts from the very beginning. Hola, ¿qué tal? How are you? And things like that. Students learn the basics of everyday language. They learn how to go to the store, how to do things. Just kind of the nuts and bolts of basic language. And this is particularly good for kids who are going to travel, who are not going to stay at the same school. They may go to a different international school. They will be able to take the Spanish language with them. And it gives you access to a lot of things in different countries, because Spanish is such a popular language.
It is. So the other one is, of course, Korean B.
Absolutely.
How does that function? How does that work?
Korean B and Spanish B have the same curriculum, so the kids are kind of learning the same thing, except for they're learning Korean. How do you say hello? What's polite conversation? How do you order food? How do you talk to a friend? How do you ask for help? All these things, and it also borders the culture of the place. They learn a little bit about Korean holidays, Korean traditions, and celebrations.
Okay. But if you, I suppose one of the questions that I've been asked over the years is, what if you choose a language and you don't like it, or it's not working for you? What does a child do about that? What does a parent do about that?
Yeah, well, ideally we want the student to stay in the same language from 6th to 10th grade, but that's an ideal situation. It has to work for that student. So if a student finds they've started a language and it's just not working for them, what they need to do is they need to talk to their teacher. They need to come and talk to me. I will have them meet with the teacher of whatever class they would like to join. We'll have a conversation with parents, and if we find that it's in the best interest of the child to change language, we can. A child who is able to achieve a phase 4, and we'll learn about that more later, can change language at any time, because that is semi-proficient.
Okay, so yes, and we'll talk about phases a bit later on. Yeah, okay. How How do teachers decide what class and what level a student goes in? Like, is there some way or mechanism that the teachers will work that out?
Yeah, it goes all the way from the more formal written tests or conversations, and then it goes to interviews, because we know that academic and non-academic listening and speaking are all different, can be all different levels.
Sure.
So the teachers will use a wide variety of tools, and in the first few weeks there'll be adjustments. Kids may be moved from one phase to another. Kids may be moved from one class to another, but it'll all be based on what is best for the kid.
Yeah. And so how long, I mean, is there a given time period as to how long a student should stay in a phase, or how long does it take to move from one phase to the next? Because you talked about phase 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah. It's a challenging thing, because some kids are more comfortable to learn a new language. You need to be a risk taker,
Sure.
and some kids are more comfortable with that. And especially kids who already have 2 languages, to learn an additional language is much quicker. Phase 1 generally is about a year, because it's fairly basic.
Sure.
Phase 2 can take about 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
As you move up and the expectations go higher, you're also reading more complex things, listening to more complex things. So phase 3 and 4 may also take 2 years. Our goal is to get kids to phase 3 or 4 in the MYP.
So that's probably by the finish of grade 10?
Assuming they start at phase 1 in grade 6.
Of course. Okay, so we've talked about Korean A, we've talked about Spanish B, and we've talked about Korean B. What are some of the benefits of studying Korean A? You talked about that a while back. What are some of the benefits of that?
And one question I like to ask the kids when they come to me for a change is, where are you going to go to college? And where do you plan to live? The Korean A, if a student is going to remain in Korea and go to Korean college, live in Korea, Korean A is very beneficial to them, because they develop not just appreciation of literature, but they also become more literate in that language. True. And I think that's very helpful. Even for kids who are moving or going to college in a different place and perhaps coming back to Korea, colleges really appreciate bilingual diplomas, and if a student's able to take Korean language and literature and English language and literature in the diploma program, it's a real boost up for them when they go applying for colleges. It's also beneficial to them, because they're learning literature in more than one language. In
2 languages, which is wonderful. I mean, I suppose the same questions could also be asked for studying Korean B. What are the benefits of studying Korean B and the benefits of studying Spanish B?
Korean B, especially for families that are going to remain in Korea for a long time, it's a great opportunity for you to be a part of the community, not just on the sidelines of the community. And children learn languages so quickly, and children are able to interact with people they don't know on the beach and in the parks and things like that.
There's an incidental interaction.
And I think it just makes it a more meaningful experience for them if they can navigate. It's a less frightening experience to be away from home. That's also, they probably help mom and dad. That makes it pretty good. So if you're planning on staying in Korea, I really do recommend Korean B, just so you can partake of the benefits of living in this country a little bit more.
And Spanish B?
Spanish B, I think Spanish is a fairly universsul language.
True.
Once you know Spanish, it can help you with the other Romance languages. Families that are not going to stay here, they're going to travel, they're going to want a language that they can take with them from country to country.
Sure.
Korean is a language we study here, but it's not going to be one that's offered in many other schools throughout the world. So if you're looking to move around, Spanish is not only helpful just because there are so many Spanish-speaking countries and speakers, but also because it's a language that you can transfer from one school to the next.
That's true. That's very true. How does so we spent time talking about Korean A and Korean B and Spanish B. How does the language that you study in the MYP, how does it affect your choices in the DP, assuming you go on to do the full DP, in grade 11? So what's the connection between the MYP moving into grade 11?
It's a complicated one because you think grade 6 is a long way away from grade 11.
True.
But knowing that we want kids to develop and move to a phase 4, when you get to DP, you have some choices to make. And whether it's getting a bilingual diploma, where you want Korean A and English A, but also once you get to diploma, there are some choices. You can begin a new language, and that's ab initio. And so students who have taken Spanish all through MYP cannot take ab initio because they will have too much experience. So they'll need to take a Spanish standard level, probably, or higher level if they progress.
Depending on the competency, yes, correct.
So I wish there were one single answer. It does impact it, but it's so specific to that student and how he or she has developed their listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills.
Yeah. I mean, and part of the things is when a student undertakes a second language like a Korean B or a Spanish B, what sort of activities do they, I mean, they're acquiring a new language. What sort of activities are they involved in helping them to acquire and become more proficient in those languages?
Okay. I think it's quite fun. If you walk by a language B class, you'll see the kids, they'll be doing role playing, they'll be singing songs, they'll be designing posters, they'll be interacting. They might be learning the crafts of the country. They might be eating the foods of the country. It's a very immersive experience. So the teachers here try to make it as hands-on and as connected to real world as they can.
I've seen some wonderful examples of Spanish recipe books that students have been writing in Spanish, and that's been a wonderful thing to be able to see.
Yeah. And just, I love when they put on the plays, when they write their own plays, when they even working different social media things like memes and Instagram.
So in other words, there's a wide variety of things that they use to help them acquire that
and
language.
It changes every year by what's most relevant to the kids, but it's interactive.
Yeah. So in order to help with that, there's obviously a whole variety of resources that teachers will use. What sort of resources do, particularly for Spanish B and Korean B, what sort of resources are available and are used by those teachers?
I think both subjects have a language book that is very helpful. And this helps not only with the progression of the language, but it also helps kind of align the two languages. So they have a textbook that they'll be using. But the teachers also bring in a wealth of their other materials and experiences, and something may happen in the world, or it may be Cinco de Mayo or something like that. So we have a textbook, but we also bring in lots of other resources, particularly advertising, videos, TV shows, etc.
So it's not just one resource; it's a multitude of resources.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Montague, it's been very, very useful for you to be able to share that information with our parents, and certainly yourself and myself, we're available for parents if they have any questions that they would like to ask us. And of course, if need be, we can put them in touch with the Korean teachers and of course the teachers of Spanish at our school. Ms. Montague, thanks for coming on this afternoon.
You're welcome. Thank you.